be vulnerable with others, and they can see the human side of you, and you see the human side of them, and like it's easier for the work to get done from there on in than when you just maybe feels like there's a stick up your butt. Yeah.
Yeah. Quick question. Are we losing you to McMaster?
The following is a conversation with Christian Fotang, current president of the Student Union at the University of Alberta and a student at the Faculty of Science. We talked about the intricacies of student advocacy and governance, the tuition hikes, as well as effective team management. Conversations about the dynamic landscape of a student politics and advocacy is always enlightening. They require a lot of insights, patience, and a deep understanding of the issue at hand. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. To support this podcast, please feel free to simply hit that follow button on Spotify or Apple Podcast, or subscribe to the YouTube channel where you can find every episode in the video format, some behind the scenes as well, and important snippets of each episode in the video format. And if you're feeling super generous today, you can follow the Patreon page of the podcast. I would greatly appreciate your support. Now, dear friends, this is Amirali Bigleri Podcast, and here is my conversation with Christian Fotang.
You study what's it called? Bio and psych, right?
Biopsych. Well, bio major psych minor, yeah.
Why is that?
Dude, I asked myself that question for the last 7 years. So grade 12, when everyone was like applying to go to university, I was like, oh crap, I also have to do that myself. So I opened my grade 12 marks, like, oh, why am I doing really well? I think biology was a class that like grades were good. So Friday night, applied for university, declared bio as my major. I almost put drama as my minor because I did a lot of theater back in high school.
Okay. Can I ask what high school you went to?
Jasper Place High School.
Is it in Edmonton?
It is in Edmonton. Yeah. It's like in the west side. It's not far from WEM. Put drama on my thing, but I was like, it's not gonna be like, I'm not gonna be able to sell that to my parents. Chickened out at the last minute and put psych. I actually thought I was doing something with that psych minor. Like I was like, oh, this would be a very interesting combination. Okay. Didn't realize that when I came to the UofA, like almost everyone has like a bio psych
yeah, exactly.
combination. But that was it. I applied on a Friday, got accepted on a Monday. I was like, okay, guess I'm going to university.
If you had gone back, would you still choose biopsych?
No. Probably history or sociology, but probably still psychology.
Okay.
Yeah. Or, I mean, worst case scenario, human physiology, because that's the type of biology I thought I was getting into.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be an honors or a specialization
honors
program.
Yeah. Honors program. Yeah.
What do you want to do after? What's the thing you have in mind of Christian doing when he's 43?
43.
I don't know.
Man, I don't even know what I'm gonna do when I'm 27, let alone 43. 43, I'd like to have a company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, same. Okay. That's interesting.
I don't know what it's gonna do, but I'd like to have a company.
Yeah, money is good.
Yeah, money is good, but also just like, getting to create something, right? Like just getting to start, build an idea. I don't know. I'm a very restless individual. Like I'm a very bad planner, but at the same time, I'm also, I just like trying new things.
You're more spontaneous.
Spontaneous, yeah. Like ask my friends, man. I pick up some random hobbies. Like I'll try a thing and I'll be like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna go on like Facebook Marketplace and see if I can
Find the
find the
second-hand
yeah
thing.
find the second hand version of that thing and like and try it out. um yeah, I remember like Abner took, it was like last year, like took our team out to a driving range for the first time, because I'd never like played golf.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, oh, this is interesting. I like went to Facebook Marketplace like the next day. I was like, okay, well, no, not the next day, well, actually I went to
Same
Facebook
night.
Marketplace to check it out. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I don't really have the money at the time to drop on that. But then a couple months later, his friend was selling his clubs secondhand.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I can purchase that.
So now you have golf clubs.
Yeah. Don't know the last time I touched them, but yeah.
Nice. Okay, I'm assuming then you like your psych part of your degree more than your bio. What
I
part of it
have,
did you like?
yeah, I've come to love the psych part more. Um, Especially neuropsychology or
Mhm.
like, yeah, like neurobiology, just because it's fun to, like, not fun, but like interesting to see how, yeah, like your biology and like brain chemistry affects behaviors and how you think and how you process and yeah, all those kind of things. Yeah.
You like the science part of psychology. The
Mhm.
psychology that is offered by the science
The science department,
department.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Honestly, I actually think that's probably what even sold me in the UofA, because when you go on their, when you, at the time when you went on their website,
Mhm.
um, you'd see like a student holding up a, I think it was like an X-ray or something like that, some kind of a brain scan. I'm like, this is cool. This is like what you get to do as a university student. Not once have I ever touched or gone near any kind of X-ray or CAT scan or anything of the sort, or MRI scan.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's called the power of marketing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No shame in that. It's just not realistic.
I was bamboozled.
um okay. So can you walk me through, because you're if you come from a family of immigrants,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How was the process of adapting to Canada? Can I ask how old you were when you came here?
So it actually makes it 10 years since I first migrated to, well, not, well, February 14th when I first migrated to Canada,
Okay.
from in 2014. To kind of understand, so I was born in Cameroon, uh, the capital city, Yaoundé. Lived there for 8 years of my life, or like seven. Moved to Manchester, England afterwards, and I
Okay.
lived in Manchester for another 7 or 6 years.
Can I ask you a very hot question?
Oh, of course, go ahead.
There is a right answer to this.
There is always a right answer to something. Yeah.
What color is Manchester?
Easy question. Easy answer. Red.
Yes.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no. Funny enough, so when I moved to Manchester, I lived probably like a 10-minute drive away from the Etihad Stadium.
Okay.
And at the time I was like, oh, I don't know who these guys are. Like
So
they're like
the
there were
loser.
nobody team back then, man. This was before Sheikh Mansour had pumped them full of money.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, well, who's the winning team? I had no shame. I was want to be on the winning team. So I learned about Manchester United, and like any team, when you pick it, you gotta stick to it. It's still
Yeah.
death. So yeah,
Right now, it's just a little bit traumatic to be a Manchester United fan, but I get it.
way she goes. You can't have 20 years of uninterrupted success without any downhill from there, right? So
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Real Madrid fan.
that's true. There you go. So yeah, moved to Manchester, lived there with my mom. So my mom actually, when I was 2 years old, she left to go to school in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So for those next 5 years of my life, I actually didn't live with her. Was raised by like my family, a lot of aunts, uncles, my grandmother. So it's when I moved to England that actually that relationship started to like become like very strong and tight. And like I remember she always tells me this story. I don't know if like, yeah, I don't remember it, but like in elementary school or primary school, I used to like people wouldn't believe that I had a mom, and I'd always be like, no, no, I do, and those kinds of things, right? Because it's
Why not?
just kids, right? Just
I see.
kid activities, just like
see.
just a way of doubting it. Because like I guess like for a child, seeing is believing.
Mm.
You know, if they didn't see it, if your mom or dad didn't come to pick you up after school, then you're
What's
not.
up? There's
What's
something
up? And it's like I know I'm not an orphan,
Mhm.
and you know, so it's like I guess it was always that insecurity to always like no, I have a mom, and like I think it was when I was 6 or yeah, then she came for a trip to Cameroon to visit, and I
From
would just
England, right?
from England, and I would
Okay.
just like parade her around the class and be like, see, I told you. um so yeah, I moved there, and that's when we started living together and becoming one. And afterwards, she had applied for the permanent residence program to move to Canada. I didn't know at the time, but as a child, you don't see these things, but they was economic opportunities here to
Mhm.
uh, re-up our lives. And then yeah, we moved to Edmonton, Alberta, and honestly, like I couldn't tell you anything about the process. Like you said, like I was very shielded from
Okay.
it.
Mhm.
I just knew one day we're packing up our bags, we're driving to London, we're flying out of Heathrow, and then we're arrived in Calgary. And when you land in Calgary, I think that's where the issue your like permanent residence card or some like temporary version of your permanent residence card. And so something the immigration officer did that has screwed up my documentation till this day is that she put all my middle names into my last name. I'm
Oh.
not gonna tell you what my middle names are, but it's long.
Oh.
And so legally I have 5 last names, which is always not a fun thing to do when I'm traveling internationally. So yeah.
That's a headache to go through. Um, my last name, I have a very not a very similar, but I have a similar experience,
Mm.
but not to this extent. My last name is in all the documentations.
Yeah.
It's Bigleri,
Bigleri. Yeah.
but it doesn't sound right in Farsi.
Yeah.
But the person who made my passport technique typed my last name in my passport had an accent and read my last name wrong because it's actually Big Larry with an A.
Yeah.
So right now, my passports, my report cards, everything is Big Larry thanks
Big Larry.
to a random dude.
Hey, it's interesting how the actions of individuals can shape our our lives and identities for the
Yeah.
rest of our life, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you, and then were you thinking of studying medicine when you got to university? That was that the thought of was that the thought that prepared your mind and mindset on okay, I'm gonna take these courses at university.
I think it was probably the primary. If I have to be honest, it was probably the primary option.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hate to have played into that cycle of, I guess what all immigrant kids do. It's like, you know, growing up, there are 3 choices before you: doctor, engineer,
Lawyer.
lawyer. I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do any of these, it's like medicine seemed very interesting
Yeah.
to me more than the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Which is always funny because people always think, oh, maybe lawyer because I've been told I love to argue. But
We'll get there later. We'll get there later.
So yeah, I thought about medicine, but like I never had a reason for like why I can be dramatic because like I feel like everything needs a calling, right? Like you need to have a glorious purpose for why you're going into things, and like I
Mhm.
never had like a moment to be like, this is the thing that is gonna make me like be like why I'm gonna be a doctor. This is what I'm gonna stand before that mixed medical interview or that panel and be like, yeah, I went into the hospital and I had this experience, or like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Especially when like you come to UofA and like you meet some first years and like they already have like their whole memoirs written out about why
Yes, that's right.
medicine was gonna be the path that they're gonna go down. So I never really always had a plan. and I just kind of like was just floating through
Mm-hmm.
the course, going down the river, just taking courses and seeing where things would take me. Um, when I first found out about what university was, like even the idea of what a university is, was in England. And it was when, I don't know if you've heard of U School. Like U School is something that like the UofA does. It's like they take elementary school kids and they bring them on campus for like a week, and they get to like work
Okay.
with students and
That's what
professors.
technically the UofA ambassadors program is for. Technically, they walk you through.
Yeah, I mean, U ambassadors, they give tours, I think, to like
High schools.
high school prospective students,
Okay.
amongst I'm sure many of the other things that U of A ambassadors do. And also to any of the U of A ambassadors watching this, they get immense swag, which is awesome. And there's something going down there. No one know what's in the Kool-Aid, because like now there's just a skyrocketing of people getting into the ambassadors program.
Mm-hmm.
So share their swag with us. Um, but no. So U of A ambassadors, I from the limited knowledge I have of it, I think it's towards to prospective students, whereas U School focuses on elementary to junior high kids,
Okay.
and it's more of like a way of exposing kids, especially from like underprivileged communities, to post-secondary, and like getting that idea in the head that like, hey, this is what post-secondary is about, breaking down some of those myths and making it easier so that come at the time when they're in grade 12 and thinking about it, it's less
Scary.
scary and less foreign of an idea to them. So something similar, I did something quite very similar back in England for the University of Manchester. They had a program where they took us from high school, went to the University of Manchester campus, and we got to like listen to some students, a lecturer, and at the time I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the university I'm gonna go to, because some of the alumni were like Brian Cox, which is a very famous like physicist,
Mm-hmm.
and Benedict Cumberbatch, and
Okay.
obviously back then Benedict Cumberbatch was trending as like Sherlock Holmes. So I'm like, yeah, I gotta go to University of Manchester, and I left that experience thinking, oh, I'm gonna like do a history drama degree, and I'm gonna learn about the history of theater, and I'm gonna like that was where I was like always like
That's a
leaning
very
towards.
different path.
Very different path than what I took now. So all that to say, it's like I've always been very spontaneous about like where I hope life takes me.
Mhm.
Medicine, I think I like, or healthcare, I should say. Like healthcare, like I think now I settled like I do want to end up in healthcare. It's a big, complicated mess. And if anything, the key themes and some of the things I've found in my life that I'm very attracted to big, complicated messes. Like I always want to solve those type of problems,
Mhm.
and healthcare is just kind of the one that intrigues me. Um, and I thought, well, the only kind of occupations I knew at the time were just being a doctor, and
I
obviously
see.
there's nurses and registered nurses and nurse practitioners and um, hospital administrators and all those kinds of stuff. But I don't know, medicine was kind of the one I'm like, being a physician could be cool, and then figure it out from there. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Um, and how did you get involved with the student governance afterward?
Wow. So getting involved in student government was a very interesting story, and I tell people this story, and some people never want to believe it's true. So first day of the first week on campus, it's the massive week of welcome tents.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going down it, checking everything out, and then I stop by the student council kind of station, and I see none other than our current VPX, Chris Beasley. Yeah, for those
What was he doing
for those who
there?
are new, yeah, Chris has been around that long. Um, but so Chris and I had known each other from a previous occupation. We both worked as pages, um, in the page program. So we're like work at the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, handing out notes and giving MLAs glasses of water and everything. So that's how we'd come to known each other. And the PACE program, you can only do it up until your first year of university. I did it in grade 11, but then I stopped because it got too much in the way of school. Like I had to like drop some of my, like I would have to always miss some classes to be able to go do the job, and it made me fall short behind. I just couldn't balance it, so I was like, okay, that's it for me. So, but I think Chris at the time was also exiting because he was going into university. So we hung out, built a good friendship, and kind of like after I left, I didn't see him as much. So that first day on campus was great seeing him again, and he was like, "Hey, you should check out student government and student governance." I was like, "No, thank you," and said bye. Nice seeing you, but take care, and like left and moved on. And so that was like the first.
Fast forward far.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, time is the greatest irony of all. But yeah, so it's like didn't think much of it. I was like, I'm not here for any of that kind of stuff. And it's like I always wanted to do like extracurricular and clubs, but nothing of that intensity. And again, the very immigrant ethic mindset is that you came to school to study. Go study. You don't need to be wasting your time with all this student governance stuff. So left it at that. Flash forward, I think 2 years later, and then flash forward 2 years later, and then I think like 2 years ago now, like 3 years ago, the vice president academic from 3 years ago, they now go by Calliope Draper, but then David Draper. Calliope reached out to me and was like, "Hey, you should help out on this campaign that I'm volunteering for. It's for Robert Bilak. He was a candidate for VPX." I was like, got time on my hands, don't really have much to do. I can help out, maybe put a couple posters up, but that's about the extent of my involvement. And I remember like going down the education building one time and seeing Robert just like stressed out, like being red on his face like a tomato, like sweat. You can see like the, I don't know, like laces on his shoes just unstrapped. Like, yeah, you could like, there was the tiredness in the man of what I would come to learn is the exhaustion of being part of an SU election campaign. I didn't think much of it. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting figure. I'm like, hey, I'm helping put up posters for you. How's the campaign going? Did some small talk.
I'm dead, man.
Yeah, exactly. Moved on. And the election results were happening in Cascade Room. And like volunteers were like welcome to attend. But I think there was like a limited amount. I somehow snuck in with Chris because I'd come to learn that Chris was also on that campaign. Unfortunately, well, I don't know. I don't say unfortunately, but things did not turn out for Robert in terms of he didn't win. A long story short, but again, I was not sentimentally attached to it. I was just asked to help put up posters for someone I didn't really know at the time, and left it at that. And the next year, Calliope would run for VPA, and I would be there to help them do one-on-ones, class talks, put up posters, and all those kinds of things.
In your third year, technically, then.
Yeah, okay. Third year. And then they encouraged me to run for council. They actually encouraged me first to fill out a vacancy position for the science seat on council. But I was like, you have to go around asking signatures. I'm like, I don't have time for that. But that I did end up running for the students council position in the council election that year. And I think part of what might have motivated me to run for council was that I had another friend who was in UASU, and they were coming to so I showed up to a council meeting, and they were presenting on like, I think would have been their FAMF at the time. Okay. And they were presenting to council on like, their FAMF, their proposal, the research and consultation they'd been getting, and they were just getting torn apart from council, like left and right. Like I don't know if for those who've had the council treatment.
Oh my god, it's
And I'm like,
so bad.
man, why are these people so mean to, like, he's one of the sweetest and
Yeah,
kindest
exactly.
guy.
Why are people
Why are you so
to
mean?
you?
I'm like, if I'm gonna join the thing, it's just for one thing, just to like change the tone of it. It's like you can engage in constructive criticism without being like do or die.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like I'd seen some of that behavior in the legislature working as a page. And honestly, it really did turn me off from politics a bit, just like seeing how some of like our elected leaders who are supposed to be adults to engage with one another, they'd be just like high school antiques and behaviors. And I'm like, that is just not like it's very dispiriting to know that these are the people who are supposed to be running our society and our province. And I was like, oh man, like if these guys are supposed to be the future politicians and breeding ground, then like that cycle is not getting any better. So I'm like, okay, like the little I can do if I can join council and just like engage in that discourse of like, let's be respectable of one another, let's be level-headed, but still bring forth those ideas, then happy to but take it. But I would honestly say the biggest factor was just getting that tap on the shoulder and someone also just saying that within me is that ability to, be a leader and come on and help. So got on to council. I think first day of the campaign was okay. I put a bunch of posters around CSIS and the chemistry Limia like pedway.
Yes.
I did not like till this day. I still don't like seeing my face
Me
around
neither.
campus, man. It's
the
weird.
Worst, it's the worst possible location of campus.
Yeah.
Because it's the center of all the labs and all the misery of chemistry labs.
Yeah. And it's just it's fine. And then we would also get an email like in March of 2020 being like, hey folks, this coronavirus thing is kind of looking scary. We'll take school will be closed for like a couple of days and we'll see where it goes from there. And as we all now realize, school was not closed for more than just a couple of days. School was indeed closed and shifted for a very long time online. So didn't have to worry about like having the forums or like going around doing as many class talks. At that point it just became like a social media, like, hey, this is what I'm gonna like do on council. I ended up driving up to Grand Prairie to stay with my mom to finish my classes from there, and did a lot of my council meetings, like just like engage with council from up there. And the COVID period on council was very interesting because I know one of the biggest conversations that come to us at the time was the pass fail thing.
Oh, yeah, changing the grading system to pass
fail, because for those who were killing it that semester, it's like, this sucks, I worked hard for my A+. And for those who were like, man, I'm about to fail this class, so it actually came in clutch. Like, it was very interesting, like, discourse. So I think that was one of the things that we talked about. I'm trying to think if there's anything big as well that we were dealing with. Like, I don't know, like I was elected as the chair of bylaw committee, sat on the policy committee. Like, these were things that I was like, again, had the time. I was quarantined in the room, getting served and playing what's that thing, Call of Duty,
Modern Warfare.
No, there's the one that you can play online. I forget which one.
I know. Jesus Christ, I don't remember.
I always forget. I always ask, like, it was time of my life, but Warzone.
Warzone. Yes,
Yeah. Warzone. Warzone on serve was just what an era. And again, was like, this is all gonna blow over. I'm just gonna go back to being a student, going into my 4th year, and I'll be graduating soon. And then Calliope and also Rowan like tapped me on the shoulder and encouraged me to run for VP external. And that's why I think it's the biggest influence of just like getting people to these positions is just, again, someone from that authority or someone from who's just like you look up to, just telling you that, hey, you can do it too. Because up until that point, I did not feel like I could do any of these things. Like, I had done theater, but I hadn't done theater in like 3 years from when I graduated from high school anymore. So like, I was very rusty in my public speaking. Like, I was like, man, this is gonna be brutal. And eventually, I was like, F it, let's try it out. Put my name on the ballot for VP external, ran uncontested, that was quite an experience. We can talk about it later.
Okay.
And then won, and then like the rest has been history. That's, I would say, the long story short of how I got in.
Technically, you campaigned just
Online.
How
Yeah.
was that?
I think my experience was unique. My experience was very different from others in the sense that like I was doing it from Texas. Yeah. So the context here is for the Christmas break, we have family down in San Antonio. So it was my mom, and my sister. She was also like, she was born like August 31st of 2020. So the fall, she was a newborn baby. We'd flown to Texas to hang out with family because it also had been a very isolating period. It was just her and me and my mom, like for most of that period. Like, let's go see family and, you know, connect and have that. With the intention that I was going to come back and run an SU campaign and see how it went. What I did not foresee was that the federal government would put out that a regulation that Canadians who had traveled outside of Canada but were wanting to come back would have to have mandatory quarantine in a hotel, and then you have to pay for that hotel yourself or something like that. It was very expensive. And my mom was like, do you really need to like be back in Edmonton?
Was there the option of campaigning in person? Because
if there was, I didn't know, but
Okay.
like I mean, like maybe like put up the odd poster and lawn sign around campus for those who are still lingering, so they can like put a name to a face when they're voting.
yeah,
But it would have been easier at least, right? Because also there was the time zone issue.
easier, yeah.
Not a big one, but still affected it. There was a time zone issue. I would have been close to like my team, at least like my campaign manager and the people, because I hadn't even taken my campaign photos up until that point. So I was supposed to like come for the break, go back to Edmonton in January, and like get all those things like figured out. So like my mom was like, I'm not in a position to to like follow those rules, or like, yeah, just like it was very expensive. So I had a call with my campaign manager and the person poster designer, and campaign manager was like, yeah, like you said, since it's COVID, honestly, it all just has to be ran online. And photos, if I can get like someone in Texas to help take a picture of me, then like
I can just send this.
just send it, and then we can design the poster that way. And honestly, the biggest thing was just to like come up with a platform and like all that, and then the social media stuff could be figured out
I see.
later.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, good to go then. I guess I'm taking this campaign not only virtually but from quite the distance. Flash forward to when campaign season begins. Just before that, I don't know if many will know this in Alberta, but at the time in Texas, they were experiencing a blizzard, and a quote unquote blizzard. So it was like, this would be like spring weather for us in Edmonton. It was like -3, -10 at the time, and like light snow. But again, for Texas, very new to them. Like they're not used to getting snow. So like
The
almost
level of comprehension of snow is very,
it's
very
very different. So everything shut down in the state. Like there were power grids that were failing, the water supply wasn't running, and it affected my aunt and uncle's house where I was staying. So thankfully, at least for a bit, the internet and power came back, but water wasn't running for a bit, and yeah, you couldn't go anywhere. So on top of the stress of trying to prepare for this campaign is also just like dealing with the hysteria of like what's going down there. So I was like, oh my God. And I remember with every gateway, like the gateway will have like an interview with candidates, just like a rapid fire. What are you doing? Like, what are you campaigning on? What are your goals? All those kinds of stuff. And I remember the first interview I did, because I was stressed out. I'm like, what the crap am I doing? Like, I'm not, and I don't run in elections. Like, this is all very new to me. We started the interview, and he's asking these questions, and I have like a million things in my head, and I like cry. I'm like, I can't do this. Like, this is just like, and like the other person's name was Christian, funny enough. And he's like, it's okay. He stopped the recording. It's like, get it. Like, he let me kind of get myself together. And I was like, okay, you know what? Just go out there, answer to the best of my ability, and let it be. And it happened, but it was just very like overwhelming. And again, like hadn't showered in like a week because
The
water wasn't running. At least the power was going, but I was kind of scared that it could like go out at any second. It all was all kind of just also feeling like, you know, last minute and all that. So yeah, it was just like a overwhelming amount of emotion that overcame on me. And I'm like, let it be. Answered it. I'm like, it will be a que sera, sera. Whatever comes out, comes out. Just focus on getting better throughout the campaign period, and left it at that. And I mean, yeah, the rest was just forums and all those kinds of things. Yeah.
How was that different from your experience as the contestant for VPX, your second term? Because that one was in person.
Yeah,
and that one I think was also very well. The audience was probably much higher because of all the things that was happening around the election, and you were not uncontested. So, and your contestant was actually your friend, Chris Beasley.
Yes.
So it's a very different emotional barrier, and it just drains something out of you. So how was that?
Much better. I learned my lesson. I knew what I was like, because ultimately, like, confidence is important in anything. Like I think confidence helps you go the extra mile with anything you want to do in life. But I get my confidence from being able to know my facts and know what I'm dealing with and know what I'm talking about. And admittedly, the first time that you run, you don't know what you're talking about, right? Like, unless you have been like buried deep in all that work and shadowing an exec for like the entire year and like absorbing that material, like, you don't know what you're talking about. And there's also that kind of need to like placate to kind of the things you feel like the student body wants to hear. So you're just like going out there and you're giving out all these promises and stuff like that, but it's like, oh my god, what if someone asked me a question about an issue that I didn't put down in my platform? It's like, I know I might not be able to get it done. So at the time, I honestly saw my platform the first time I ran as like a library list of like, if someone asked me a question on this thing, open up platform, here's my position on it, there's your answer, right? I think I still try to make them grounded in realistic goals, but it was like very long. So because that would help me give confidence in answering my question. So the second time around, it was like, okay, I know the job, I've done the job, I know what you can do in a year, what's possible in a year. Like, I could speak from a better level of confidence than I couldn't, which was the first thing that made it easier. The second time around, I was able to get, you know, great campaign shots, great poster, a nice haircut. I like looked more put together than the first one, and a really good slogan. Like, till this day,
What was the slogan?
Fotang's not finished.
Oh,
right?
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I mean, that has still stuck. So like, I will say, like, I think that that second campaign was a much easier ride, but difficult in the sense, like you said, I was contested against a very good opponent too, right? To Chris's credit, he'd been around a long time. I looked up to him as like a mentor of sorts in governance. Like, he helped me in my first campaign with like speech writing and like forum preps and all those kinds of things. And I was very ready to, like, after my first, like, I think by December, I was ready to like check out, call it quits. I'm like, the student union stuff was a nice time, a nice little side adventure in university, but I have to get back to school. But there was still an urgency to like, I wanted to make change. Like, I haven't talked about like the reasons like that also drove me to getting it. Like, being tapped on the shoulder was important, was one thing, but also like seeing what was going on campus. Because I'm, like I said, going back to that, I'm a big arguer. I'm also like, I can complain a lot about things, right? It's like, it's one thing to complain, But if you're given the opportunity to actually even try fixing those problems, um, do it, right? So it's like I can take solace in the fact that win or lose or elected or non-elected, I put down ideas to like some of the things and issues that I wanted to see on campus, and that's more than maybe like others can say. So yeah, so going back to the second time around, it's like, okay, like I came in here wanting to make change as much as possible, but it was a learning curve. I have a bit more confidence and understanding of how the role works and what it takes to get things done within the role. Maybe I'm not quite finished. So yeah, that was no pun intended. Maybe I'm not quite finished, but it's like, I don't know. And it was also going to be a tough sell to my parents because the first time around, it was supposed to be like, yeah, sure, go try it out. They didn't really understand why I needed to do politics.
Did they understand that it's a paid position and the fact that you have to take only 1 or 2 courses every semester afterward?
That's exactly why it was a hard sell, right? Like not
Mhm.
the paid position part, but like that you have to take 1 or 2
Extra years.
like to delay your degree, right? Or like 1 or 2 courses that would delay your degree. So it's like that's not what they sent you to school for. They sent you to school to learn. But I think I also benefited in the fact that I have like younger parents. So it's like while they had some traditional perspectives, they were also just kind of like they'd gone through university, and ultimately they also knew that like, look, um, it's okay not to be married to like one thing. Like it's okay to come into university with thinking this is what I want to do and then leave being like, okay, maybe there's a change of plans. To them, I think it was just more like just once you find that thing, just like now put your energy and effort into it. So it's like, okay, well, go try out, student politics and whatever. This is what you feel you like, then we can encourage you to go there. But for them, it was like, why am I being split between the sciences? And what they saw was like is the liberal arts and stuff like that. So first try was like, okay, they can get convinced. Second time around was like, this is not, you're not a serious boy. But I managed to, we had that. It was a tough conversation, but they were convinced. Um, but before even having that conversation with them, it was a matter of like conversation with myself of like do I want to keep doing this? Because Chris had also been thinking of running like the year after I would have ran. Like he wanted to come in and also bring his own ideas and changes. And I remember being in the movie theaters in Calgary with my partner and her sister and her younger brother, and we were watching Sing 2. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Okay.
Really good movie.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this song that comes up, and it's called "Could Have Been Me," and I think it's sang by the actress in the movie. It's sang by Haley Steinfeld, but the original band that sang it is the Struts, and it was just like listening to this song, and it's talking about like not wanting to have regrets, not wanting to look back, and then saying like it could have been me. And I think like in that moment, I'm like, yes, I'm ready to go, but I also don't want to have that like moment of just going back to being a student and then just like seeing things get done,
And not the way you want.
not the way I wanted it to be, or knowing that I could have like I'm like that close to like getting some of these things pushed through the finish line, and then complaining and saying that, oh well, would that I could, that could have been me. But so I think having that still like had that emotional experience, left the theater, I'm like, nah, I'm good. And then coming back to the office in like January, and then just working and like enjoying that work, and then something just switched on, and I had a call with another close friend, and we kind of talked about it, and it's like, if this is what you really want, then go for it. And yeah, met up with Chris to just kind of talk about a like change of mind. It's going to be a contested election, and it was a great race. Like we didn't hold back the first few weeks with the throwing punches of like what he criticized that I could have done better, and me also criticizing that some of his platform finds don't make any sense and all those kinds of things. And so it was intense in that sense. My Instagram account was also like blocked. Like I lost that. What happened? Like my theory goes, I think I was like, something happened there. Either reported a bunch of times, I don't know, but I lost access to my Instagram, so the one I was going to campaign from. So for like that first half of the campaign season, like there was like no following, so it was all going to be like ground game posters and all that kind of stuff.
Playing traditional.
Very, yeah, quite traditional. Also didn't help that, like, you know, like psychologically speaking, like with gateway report cards, like I think I got a D plus, and like usually for the most part students don't pay attention to those things, but for those that
It
do,
does psychologically
exactly, like
affect you,
you, right? So it's like I was like going into that campaign not feeling
the most confident.
the most confident, but I had a great team behind me, really dedicated friends, who were able to do one-on-ones on or around campus, and again, like I said, a very good, catchy, slogan. But yeah, I wasn't like confident. I wasn't sure like how it was going to go. Second half of the campaign, I think I got my Instagram back, so there was some really good content that was coming out. Like I think I had that. Yeah, that video was like the Kanye West song, like "Can I Talk My Shit Again?" And it's like it caught on very well. So helped out with kind of building back that momentum. But again, like came the hour when the campaign part ended and voting was closed, I couldn't tell you who would have, like, you know, where I would stand. And I tell Chris this now because when he campaigned, he had this, like, it wasn't a giant, but like maybe a billboard that like was the A high, and it was like vote Beasley for VPX, and it was like this, you could not miss it. Like when you're coming out of sub heading towards quad, it's like that first thing that you see. So you have like his giant stupid billboard and like my small poster or like lawn sign, and it's like every day you have to like walk past that, and like knowing that students,
I wish I could take this.
yeah, it's like a thing of like, yeah, students are seeing that, and then yours is just there blowing back and forth in the wind like a tube, man, and
Snow on it.
yeah, snow on it. And I'm like, but like you can't let that shit get to you, man. Like, yeah, it was like, it's like you see it, I get mad and I just go into cab and chemistry, and I'm like powerhousing the one-on-ones, doing classroom talks. But even I, like, after all of that, couldn't tell you how it would have gone. So like less stress about the content, less stress about kind of what I wanted to do. Like I could speak more confidently to like the VPX I knew that I wanted to be the second time around. Couldn't say the same in terms of like campaigning and all that, because like I was milestones better than the first campaign. But like you said, because it was an opponent this time around, it also did change the factor. And that was.
I see. What was the... Okay, I have two questions now. The first one is, I think one of the criticisms to people who are not part of the student union and are trying to run for the election is that they're not aware of the fact that 99% of your job is going to be just sustaining the student union and trying to start initiatives that would eventually in the long term make the changes that you want to change. And as a result, they come up with more ambitious goals and suggest longer time periods in which those goals will be achieved. So how do you think the student union can improve communicating those to students who want to run, at the same time don't have much experience with the student governance?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I feel, been the $1 million question for a very long time, because you have to kind of balance a couple of things. You have to balance your right that there are already established projects and goals that are ongoing that certainly need to be finished, and it would be great, like, you know, what we call quote unquote legacy projects. With you also, like, if you've seen an issue in your students union that you want to change, you also need to feel empowered to come in and bring about that change, right? Like maybe the change and the things you want to suggest are coming from a place of ignorance, and then you'll come into the role and maybe learn all those things you're talking about, the time constraints, the resource constraints, and all that kind of things. So like you have to balance still being able to run on the idea that you want to do things differently and do things that allow for the students union to be able to change. Where I think the information deficit and like how that could be improved is, first of all, it could maybe come from like video modules. Like I've seen some schools have things where like if you want to be a declared candidate, you have to like watch some like modules or stuff like that that kind of go over like what the students union, like the student association is, and kind of like the strategic plans and all those kinds of things, so you have a better grasp and understanding before you go about campaigning. I also think that maybe like encouraging like candidates to come in and like meet either with the outgoing executive team or even with like some of our senior managers are happy to give students like a better whereabouts of like
Just consult
and
consulting
like
about their platforms.
the platforms, and like
Mhm.
obviously the managers do a great job of like keeping their distance and like not being biased or like not overstepping like where like the exec's authority is, but at the same time being like, yeah, this like if you want to change this thing in Dewey's or Daily Grind or Submart, like
These would be the
this would
process.
be the
These would be
processes.
steps.
Yeah.
I see.
So that's one way of going about it. But I mean, like I said, like if someone came in if someone still knew how things worked, but was like, I am fundamentally or ideologically opposed to that, like it doesn't really matter, right?
Mhm.
So like you can't necessarily change that except for like if they get elected and come into the role,
Mhm.
then it's like a transition thing or a conversation thing to be like, hey, glad that you ran on this thing, you have the mandate, but here are going to be the constraints that you'll face.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay, and my second question would be, how was the conversation with Chris after the results were out?
Oh, so do you know how much the vote difference was?
No, I don't know. At the same time, I know it was very close.
Close.
By the way, for context, I was in Augustana.
Oh,
and
right
I
on.
was watching this. I was technically stalking the election
Oh, yeah.
because it's not that relevant to Augustana campus, the campaigning period.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So 33 votes was
oh
the
my
difference.
God, really?
Yeah. 33 votes was the difference. I mean, I think the most recent VPX race is even less than that now, but 33 votes was the difference, and like I was in shock because, like I said, like if you'd asked me if I was a betting man, I probably wouldn't have even bet on me, right? Because like he did have a good machine behind him. He'd been planning it for a year, and mine was like a last minute hustle and muscle together. Maybe
Mhm.
that was the benefit of like the incumbency effect, and people were like, Christian, like it was like, hey, you're the incumbent, it was yours to lose. But I'm like, from the position that I saw and where I was like, I did not
I see.
I did not feel that way. I don't think I had a conversation
I
with
see.
him. Like I was just like the shock and
Mhm.
joy of actually like pulling it off and like celebrating with my team. um I I don't like, maybe I feel bad if I didn't. I don't think like we had like a chat
Mhm.
or a talk.
It's a very chaotic.
Yeah.
What's it called? 30 minutes or 1 hour
Hmm.
of your life, because it's a lot of emotions.
It's a lot of emotions, and I think maybe afterwards we had like a nice conversation of like, hey, this is like, how was that?
Mhm.
Yeah, but and we were like, he's a VP. We're all on the same team, so like, if anyone can tell, like, I think it worked out well from like
Yeah.
a relationship and friendship wise. Like, I don't think that changed. But certainly it was just kind of like, I'm sure it was hard on him,
Mhm.
but yeah.
But I think if it's because whatever you guys did, it seems like it has worked, and that's very valuable to see in a friendship when
Yeah.
these dynamics happen. Okay, now, so you weren't really thinking of running for the second term as as the student union VPX. I don't know how to tell you this, but you also ran for a presidential election.
Yeah, I know.
So how was that?
President election, third time around, like I said, the confidence is there.
Did you make a decision? Did you actively plan this throughout the
No.
year, or was it also a last minute decision?
Very
Okay,
last minute.
I see.
Dude, I'm a terrible student, and it reflected in my planning. Like, it was a last minute thing. Like, it's like I said, 2 years,
Mhm.
more than enough. And like, I did end up achieving the things that I set out to achieve, right? Like international student work hours, more mental health supports, um, like addressing some of the imbalances in the Canada student loan, elimination of interest. What else was there? Um, like the 2% cap on tuition. Like, those were things I'm like, can wash my hands, uh, retire the jersey and move on. But yeah, I was not intending on running for president, especially because it's like 3 years is unheard of usually in the students union. It was very much, yeah, it was like it was a last minute decision, and I'm trying to think like what went in my head, because we'd also had, yeah, uh 3 women on that exec team
Mhm.
who were more than capable and strong to be um uh president. And I hope, like, I'd say should have, but maybe I'm being harsh on them, but like would have been excellent, probably, far better than I am, campaign or role wise. But I think it also spoke to the underlying problem that our governance environment had in regards to how it treated a lot of the women VPs, right? And I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone, but like that's always the thing. It's like, oh, encourage more women to run. And it's like that's great. And from how I observed it, and from certainly the conversation I had, like, encouragement wasn't the problem. Like, you can encourage people you want, but like if you bring them into an environment where they're not empowered to succeed, or they're not supported uh, to assert themselves and be the very competent people they are, it makes it very hard to it makes it like it adds to those like really tough decisions. So I can't speak to why other folks on the team didn't run, or all their reasons, but I certainly know that you look back at that year and even the year before that, and how women VPs have been treated, it certainly adds to that. And like that's something, like, to be honest, I'd say I'm surprised by. I don't know when this podcast is coming out. Maybe it's after my term or in the middle of it, but like I'm always intrigued by the short term memories of some people, because
Okay,
it's
yeah, makes
like
sense.
people are like, oh man, like, oh what, like, yeah, just like people asking, oh, we haven't had a woman president in a while, and now obviously we will have, and I'm very happy to see that. But I think sometimes people forget, or something I'm always like I found funny. It's like we're called like the boys club and something like that, and I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not by like choice. There's no evil machination thing happening behind the scenes to get like men to be the one to run student governance. Even in that last minute decision, and prior to that, when I was going to run for president, there were still so many women I was talking to be like, run, like, you're more than qualified, like, look at the things you've achieved, whether as a faculty association president or as a counselor, this, like, run. But it came back to like what they saw was the treatment
Mhm.
they received, uh or like they saw that other VPs received, or like just how they observed and the tone and how people are treated on council. So it's like that kind of stuff always was interesting to me, in terms of, I guess, because not like 100% of the student body is not always looking at the student union stuff. So maybe they'll always see what happens only in the time frame of the election, and then check out, and then wait until the election again. But when you pay attention the entire year and you actually see the things that are going down, it's like, okay, maybe I can see why things end up the way they are. So yeah.
I do want to um, talk to one of the previous executives of the student union who have been women, to ask how as a campus community, we can contribute to maybe decreasing these problems for them. So if you know someone who would be interested, I would be happy to.
I don't know. I'm not. I don't. Yeah, yeah. You reach out. You reach out. But I mean, I just think I myself included, like we all just have to get better at calling BS
Mhm.
when we see people doing BS stuff, especially towards women VPs, and it's not easy. It's certainly not like a lot of people don't want to get their hands dirty in the mud a lot, and certainly a lot of people don't want to feel like they at the student politics level
Mhm.
need to get that. Like if I'm gonna put my reputation and and worth out there, like the risk reward at this level of leadership for some people is they
Too
don't
high.
it's too high. Yeah, it's like yeah, so it's like it's not worth it, and people keep their mouth out of it. But then the consequences of that is that you have individuals who continue to get away with bullying or sexism and taunting. So
I see.
yeah.
Okay, let's go fast forward when you got elected as the president of the student union. I think I don't think I'm certain that because of the change of all the responsibilities you have,
Mm.
first of all, you might feel a bit incompetent in the beginning because of all the debriefing of all the other aspects of your job that you have to
Yeah.
receive. And as well as that, you have the challenge of, first of all, as the president, have authority over your team, your
Mm.
executives, and at the same time, have a camaraderie with them to make sure that they're open and they understand that you're also open to have any conversations with them, so the team can thrive. So how was the process of achieving that? Because it's a part of the character development that I think you will face the problem with when you are in the challenge.
Mm. So repeat that last part. What's the process of
What's the process of working on achieving that kind of dynamic with your team?
um yeah, I'm sure they'll like this answer, but
Who will like this answer?
like
The team.
the team. um like legitimacy and credibility as a leader doesn't come from just saying I'm president, so listen to me, right? You're like to your point about um like balancing that quote unquote authority. It's like if I have to go around screaming that I'm president, listen to me, it's not the most effective way of getting things done. It's not the best way of getting buy-in. And certainly a good reminder that the president doesn't sit above the VPs. It's actually a very horizontal structure. We all have the same vote in executive committee for anything to go ahead. I mean, I chair the discussions, I facilitate the discussions, and I obviously put as the official spokesperson and responsible for managing that conversation and moving things ahead. And I'd say the authority comes from the ability of the president to direct the general manager. So if there are things that need to get done, like that's where that power comes from. But like if someone comes in demanding that something happen with the students union in general, like it's not the president who can just wave their hand and get it done. I still have to be able to convince 5 other people
Mm-hmm.
that this is what you need to do. So I think humbling myself to that, and I hope they see it that way, like humbling myself to that allows them to also be like, okay, like as long as I know that I can have a voice in these discussions, and we can disagree and we won't always maybe agree on how something should be solved, but if we can build consensus. I'm a big believer in consensus leadership. I mean, the downsides, quote unquote, of consensus that it takes more time to sometimes build that, and it can be a frustrating process. But I think that allows, like you said, for that camaraderie to be long lasting,
Build on a
to
good
build
foundation.
on a solid foundation. And I think we're folks who are very good at maintaining our disagreements with work outside of our personal feelings for one another, right? And like I think in governance that can oftentimes be what people may take issue with. And like it's in our council oath, right? Like I should debate ideas, not people, right? So it's like I don't think it's ever gone to a point where like anyone's character or personality is being called to question. It's like I might agree or say that I think X should be done like this, and someone might say, actually, I think it should be done like that. And then the conversation is, well, why? Not you suck and therefore I shouldn't have to listen to you, so move on. I think that helps out with it. I mean, there's a bunch of other things I can say that help out with the camaraderie. Like everyone's personality is different, right? And so when like you're a leader, you have to learn to like not just for the Students Union, with anything. Like I'm sure you saw it being in the International Students Association and any other leadership position that you've been in. Like how you work with person A is going to be different than how you work with person B. You have to be able to like mirror
a very personalized approach for every person.
Yeah, for every person, right? And build that relationship. Like you know, like some of my VPs will take no issue with like roasting me and something like that, and it's like it's fine because that's how you demystify any sense of kind of being above or below another person. And I also just don't like titles. Like I make a point of that. Like I've gone over it now. It's what, month 11, but like I genuinely did not like being called president or even vice president. Like I just call me Christian, right? Like, oh, Fotang, as most people call me, and like that's fine. But yeah, it's just very like I came to do a job. I don't see myself as above or beyond anyone else.
Mm-hmm. But you do call everyone. Hey boss.
Hey boss. Yeah. Those are the titles that matter, man. Like, if I like you, yeah. You know, you're big dog or big boss.
Being called hey boss.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, there's boss man, boss lady, boss person. That like that's like that to me is like those are just the funny ones, right? Like, yeah, there's hey buddy, hey big dog, hey boss. So that's when you know that's where you are. That's how you know where you stand and how I'm feeling about you that day. Yeah.
That shows the level of camaraderie you have.
Exactly.
Okay. Can I wanted to ask about the kind of pressure that this job brings up. Because I always keep saying this, it's not a big deal. You're supposed to, you're in charge of a team that is responsible for policy making advocacy on behalf of students for an academic institution. At the same time, I can also word it in a way that you represent 35,000 students, and you're in charge of this much budget, and that brings up a lot of pressure. So what's the process of pulling yourself out of that pressure and just giving yourself the time to do what you believe in? If you make mistakes, learn from your mistakes and admit that you made those mistakes and now you can do better, and at the same time still be confident in that role.
Yeah, I don't know how to start answering that. Like all these things, as I tell or give an answer, are easier said than done. So I'll preface by that. But like that's like, I mean, you answered the question as you said it, right? It's like you have to give patience with yourself, that you're only one person. Mistakes are how you get up and learn and move on, and you just have to accept it and take whatever lessons you can from that experience. The pressure is a lot. Like I won't lie about that. I'm not the first person to have to go through it. I certainly won't be the last. And I think that's often where the starting point for me is. When you come into the president's office, you'll see some pillars with the names written on it in different styles and designs, and those are the names of my predecessors and previous presidents. And I mean, every office has previous executives, but in my office especially, like it's the previous presidents. And so that I also think is a good reminder when I'm stressed out, is that like Like everyone who's written that name has had some kind of a stress. Some, I'm sure, probably even worse than what I'm going through. And they pushed through and they made it through. And I really love the quote of like, "In time, this too shall pass." Right.
Yeah.
I think that actually might be a Persian or Arabic quote.
It's from Rumi.
Rumi, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So this too shall pass is like my mantra for when I face tough times. But in the moment, it's not easy. Because in the moment, any error, mistake, problem, you feel, even if you have like, even if you're so away from it, but because it's attached to the students union, you feel this responsibility that it's like, like you feel this responsibility that you have to do something about it. Like it's your thing to bear, and that can be what helps, that what like adds to that pressure, and it can manifest itself in different ways. Either like you withdraw from people, or you just like work even more because you feel like if I work harder or like do something, then like I'm working towards the solutions that are gonna address that problem. But really you're telling yourself you're working, but all you're doing is maybe just avoiding another problem, and or not getting enough sleep and all those kinds of things that make your body healthy to actually deal with these crises. So I say that's the hardest one. It also just sucks because that's where you really rely on your team. And like, I'm very proud on all the 3 years that I've been an exec. I've had an incredibly supportive group of people who have been there for me, and we've been there for each other. Because like those really are the people who understand what you're going through, right? It's a very hard job to explain, let alone to the student body, but to your family members or friends who are like, you don't hang out with as much anymore, or you have to like miss out on things because like something's coming up at work. So like I think your team becomes the biggest supporter for you in like managing through that pressure, and like knowing that they can also just help take off a load from your plate, but like it doesn't dismiss the fact that like that pressure, real or perceived, is still very hard on you. And it's really sad. Like I like trigger warning here on suicide, but it's like it is something that you see around the country, that we've had counterparts who've lost their lives through suicide, or because of that kind of pressure, and because it's like you feel a mounting amount of stress at others, will resign or step down, and it's like, okay, no longer my cross to bear. But it's these are really tough positions psychologically, and it's very easy to psychologically, physically, mentally, whatever, like in all sorts of ways, and it's easy to fall into a habit or lifestyle that is not very healthy or productive as a means of getting through it. But you kind of have to like remind yourself that you're only one person, that you have a team around you of staff, of VPs, of a family. And one advice I was given though is that even if people don't understand, try to make them understand. Like you might come across as like you're like over defending yourself or whatever, but it's like just do your best and like explain it to them. Because sometimes people actually do want to be curious, like do want to know what it is that you're doing. Like, why is this 21-year-old or 22-year-old responsible for all this decision making or level of things, right? And I actually found it like as president, like I'd say as president there's more intensity to the pressure, but as VPX, when you bring up the number of like representing 35,000 students, when I was chair of CASA, I was representing technically more than that, like 300,000 students.
Yes.
And you're in a meeting with a government official, and they're like, so what do students think about this thing? And it's like,
I don't know.
Holy shit. And like no, it's like in that moment you're supposed, like, not that,
which one should I say?
which one should I say?
Long story, man.
Yeah, like not that my word is gospel, but like these people are taking what you're saying on behalf of a lot of people, and they're going to run with that and make that government priority. And not that I don't know if this would happen, but like the things that go through my head is like, oh my gosh, so what if I didn't mention this other thing because there's a student that's dealing with that and like this other thing. So like there's so much that you obviously have to say, but in that moment, it's like, okay, well, this is what I imagine or think a lot of students across this country are dealing with. And like that itself is a very, yeah, like it makes you want to puke sometimes, but like in a good way, like in like, I'm proud of the work I'm doing, but it's not.
Very extreme butterflies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about CASA. So, when in your experience as the VP external, you have a very intense period of lobbying with government officials, whether it's the government of Alberta or Canada. And one of the things you need to remember is that, well, although you've been at this job for quite a while, or you or Chris, I'll talk to Chris hopefully later, but you're dealing with people who have been in politics for a very long time, and there are going to be politicians with you. And when you're lobbying, it's not just you reporting problems to them, it's also more the matter of which problem you want to portray how, and in a way that they understand the urgency of the problem, and as a result they work toward it. So technically you also have to be a politician with a politician. And I think that's a little bit challenging when you're 22.
Yeah.
So how is the process of preparing for these kind of lobbying as the VPX? And how was the rush through that?
I love your thing about like you have to be a politician to politicians. Something, I mean, especially because the VP external one is the one dealing with the politicians. People are like, oh, these are just like future wannabe student politicians or like politicians like in the future or whatever.
It's very famous for being an internship position for politicized students.
And it's like, I don't want to be a politician. Like I'm a biosci kid who just wanted to help out and bring change on campus in a role that I felt that I could do that in. Because with the VPX role, you're not being asked to be the one to always write the policy suggestions to it. Like all you're being asked to do is convince and advocate and support these student issues. Like I didn't see myself, even though I really am interested in policy writing, I didn't see myself every day coming into the office being like, how am I going to solve, insert like all like the challenges that society is facing, like how am I going to solve world hunger, or like how am I going to write up the policies to like eliminate debt. Sometimes your work, and actually the way I saw the role, is that it's your job to bring the people together who can all work collectively to convince the government, or bring the people together behind a priority. Like there's so many things you could advocate on, but bring them behind a priority that we could center our focus on. And that, as a people person, I felt like I could do. And that's honestly how I also saw the VP external role. Like no one was asking me every day to come in and write 10,000 word policies on a bunch of things, right? Like the policy's already out there. Like if you really take an hour and research, you'll see there's all sorts of policy wonks that have pumped out ideas for like what you could do to fix the debt crisis or student housing or whatever it is. Even with like international student issues, like you'd like all I need to do is have a conversation with as many international students across here in the country, and like you get an idea of like, okay, look, this is the problem. The next step now is being able to communicate that problem with the government. And it's like if the communication part like that you can practice and work and get better at, right? So I think that gave me confidence. And it's like and the reason I also say like I don't want to be I don't want to be a politician, nor do like people feel like you need to be a politician to do these roles, because the only prerequisite you need to be for a student leader is to be a student. Like there's no politics behind understanding the student experience. Like I think sometimes I feel like we forget that and like are too harsh on student leaders about, because it's like, yeah, maybe there are some people who can come in here with self-interest and personal intentions, but like I think that is easier to spot, like someone who is out there for their own personal gain. If if they're failing, then the student is failing, right? If they're only coming here without any kind of preparedness, then and no one's going to benefit. But if someone is coming here with the right intentions, you can, like, even if the work to get there is going to be a marathon and not a sprint, like, you can still see them putting that effort. And to advocate on these matters, like, we've all experienced it. Like, all you need to do is get in a room with a politician and say, like, hey, I'm going through this. Like, I know countless of students who are also going through this. Like, these are the impact it's having, and these are the impact it's going to have on our province or on our economy or society. Like, and here are some people who've written a really good paper on how you could address that. And then the conversation now becomes multi-year, or however long it takes to then arrive at a solution given budget restraints or resource constraints and all those kinds of things. So, like, I don't think of myself as someone who needs to fix all these, like, the issues in the world, like all the problems, right? It's like there are people who are already doing that, and for those who want to get into politics and do that, like, also I also applaud those people, right? It's like career politicians, get a bad rap for in most instances for a certain reason. But it's like, yeah, like, you don't meet someone who's like says, I want to be a career doctor, and they're like, oh, screw you, how dare you have ambition, right? It's like that's the thing. And it's like if someone comes and tells you in uni that I want to be a doctor and I want to help find a cure to Alzheimer's, you're like, that guy gets, like, like they're gonna change the world. Versus someone coming in, it's like, I want to use the levers of our system and politics, whatever, to like implement like, then it's like, oh, politics, no bad. So it's like, I don't consider myself having any ambition in politics. That means I also don't think people should be shamed for having those ambitions. And if these are going to be the stomping ground, let's also then use it in a manner that is able to change how politics is operating right now in our country, right? Like, we're seeing behaviors and approaches that are full of people not digging into the truth or whatever. But sorry, I've strayed far from the original question, which is like, what
I'm enjoying these tangents,
yeah
don't worry.
yeah which I can get in the habit of that. But to the point of like how you prep for them is, you need to always be solutions orientated. Like, advocacy without a solution is just complaining, and complaining is easy. Fixing the problem is much harder. And sometimes that first step of like, okay, well, what are we trying to fix? We've identified the problem. What are we trying to fix, and why is that the solution that matters? I remember someone giving me advice that's that your role in advocacy is to figure out, like I've already said, what is it that you're trying to fix? Provide your solution. Tell government why that is the solution. And then tell government why that is the solution that has to happen in this year.
I see.
Or in this year. Because it's like, there's so many problems out there, right? Why is your solution the one that needs to take priority over this other issue? Or like, why is this student issue the one that needs to take priority over this other student issue? And government can work on multiple things at a time. So like, this is just a very slimmed down idea. But like, that's the kind of framework that you go into these meetings with. It's like, okay, international work hours, why is that a problem? What are the consequences of the problem? Why is the removal of the cap going to fix that problem? And why is the removal of the cap something the government needs to do this year in order to prevent a larger problem? Like, that's a very condensed example of that. Yeah.
I want to wrap up this tangent of the student union so we can talk about other things. But before I do that, what are the things you wish you had known when you came to your role as the president of the student union?
Oh, as the president.
And you learned those, and then you wish you had actually known those before coming there.
Oh, I'm gonna need some time to think about that one.
Can I invite you
offer some tea? Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah.
While you're thinking.
What things I know.
Or technically, any lessons you learned throughout your 3 years of experience. So.
Honestly, I would say that in terms of general experience, sometimes I feel like the VP external job should be like minimum 2 years. Like you should just give them that because it's a role where like you kind of do need that first year.
You do need to cultivate all the, what's it called? The
Relationships.
and then the second year becomes the fruit.
Yeah, of
season.
your labor.
I see.
Because it's very hard to transition
Yeah, makes sense.
relationships.
Yeah.
It's very hard. Like a lot of these things are built on trust, and trust can take a long time, or depending on how it goes to build, right? So I would say I wish I'd known the value that trust building takes even more, because like I was told about it, but it's just like like it makes it easier to really just like come together, trust, let's get behind these things, this one solid priority, and go for it. In terms of when I was like having done the presidency term, it's hard. I don't know where to start. I feel like we could have another episode on its own just about lessons. I won't say this applies for president, but I think I've learned it both in this term and in past terms because it's hard. Like you can say no. Like it's okay to say no, because when you're an advocate, when you're in these roles, you're here to help people, and every time someone comes into your inbox or through the door, or with some kind of new idea, whatever it is, and I don't mean no in like a go away, we're not doing that. No as in like not everything needs to feel like a priority all the time, because in the pursuit of trying to be kind and help people, you find yourself like again trying to fix so many things when you're stretched so thin. And I think if you can find a way to empower people to get to the places where they can find answers for themselves, like that whole lead a horse to water versus give them the water, whatever it is. So I'm bad with analogies. I think that's an interesting one. It's like like you don't like it's fine. But at the same time, a good one is take really good notes.
Oh boy.
Just everything. Yeah, take really good notes. Sorry, these are all just scattered. But take good notes because this is like you're in so many meetings.
Oh, okay. I see.
You're in so many meetings. Oh, that's you know what? That's like just like I wish I'd known just how many fucking meetings can take up your day, and the struggle of being in a meeting doesn't necessarily mean you're always working.
Yeah.
Right?
Or being productive.
Or being productive, right? And it's not to say that we're taking unproductive meetings, but it's like in your job, they're just meetings you have to like do that take up your time by virtue of like the roles you're in, whether these are governance committees or board of governors committees or other like calls, like all these kinds of things that can take up time. And then there's like other work that needs to be done outside of committee time that you need to do. And it's just like it all piles up so fast. So if there's a way to just like slim down meetings, I think that'd be great. But again, some of them are just so unavoidable because it's like these are the committees where like things have to pass through and someone has to take a look at them, right? It's just that aspect of the governance structure. Aside from that, I wish I had I don't know. Yeah, maybe another one will come up later.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're now officially done with this new tangent.
Okay, there you go.
I was preparing for this interview, and therefore I was stalking you as one would. And I found that you have had experience researching on atmospheric chemistry.
Yes, something of the sorts. Yeah.
How was that process? What did you work on?
So I had, you know, there comes a point in every general science or science students like UofA point where they're like, man, I need research experience.
Yes, you did, yeah.
And so I reached out to my Chem 101 prof. Or is it 102? I forget. I think it's 101's a class, right?
Yes.
It's been so long. Yeah. Chem 101.
So 102 is also a class.
It's also a class. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is 103 a class as well?
Sorry,
I keep like, I don't know. Anyway, I reached out to a professor in chemistry, and ran down. I was like, hey, I'm looking to get involved in research. Can you like point me in any direction or know anything? And because ideally I would have like, wanted something in biology or psychology, because that's my.
But you need a start point.
You need a start point,
Yeah.
right? And he's like, yeah, like check out URI. Like I might have a project happening this summer, so apply for the undergraduate research initiative, and go from there. So applied for it, was successful, and then I was able to be in it because he was like, because I was also ready to volunteer. I'm like, just give me anything. I'm like, I just want just to be in the room. And he's like, no, like paid work. He is a strong believer in pay for work, and also just like for him, it's also just like psychologically, you need that incentive, right? Like when someone volunteers, they become inconsistent because it's easy to just slack off on, not necessarily in other volunteers aspect, but in like that type of an environment where like you kind of need to constantly maybe be there to monitor it. But he knew something that I didn't, and was like, volunteering is not the move.
I see.
And one of the first projects that I was supposed to look at was trying to identify a tracer for when cow dung or cow poop was emitted, when it was burned, was emitted into the atmosphere.
Okay.
Because in certain countries and communities, people will use that as a fuel source for like cooking, whatever it is. Like they'll take poop and light it on fire and use it for all sorts of things. And so that smoke
creates it's not full of good stuff.
It's not full of good stuff that are ending up in the atmosphere that could be doing all sorts of things once they're up there. So it was trying to find some kind of a tracer for cow dung, so that when you detect
when it's vapor
in the atmosphere, like, okay, like there's high amounts of this, so that means that there's an indicator that cow poop is being used a lot as a fuel in this area. We called it the bullshit lab, because that's what it is. Like we're working on bullshit. And an example that we're using is that there's another tracer, I forget the name, it's been such a while, I feel I'm going to embarrass myself, that you can detect when you burn wood, right? So it's like, if you can do similar for that, you can do it for, hopefully we could find something for cow poop, because that tracer, especially when there's like either forest fires or like slash and burn in an area, it's in high amounts.
That marker.
Yeah, you get that marker. Yeah. So trying to do something similar, and then COVID happened, which disrupted a bit of the work. So I was then moved to work on another project that was dealing with some synthetic organic compounds, and specifically looking at compounds that are emitted by bacteria, because my supervisor, he was really interested in kind of like indoor air quality, because everyone also looks at outdoor air quality, but indoor air quality was another thing, because Canadians spend a lot of time, majority of the time indoors, given cold weather and everything. So it's important that the air you breathe inside your house is healthy. And in homes where there's like moldy pipes and your radiators or back corners and fridges, like there can be bacteria there, and if they're emitting some of these volatile organic compounds, that can be bad in huge quantities. So that was a good exposure to yeah, like first step into research. I started yeah, so when COVID happened, I was up in Grand Prairie. So the first part of the research was mostly a lot of like data analysis. I was supposed to like do a literature review on the subjects and that topic, and was deep in a lot of Excel sheets trying to like sort out a lot of data. So it wasn't sexy. But then the university had started going back into its reopening phase, and they were gonna pilot it with the chemistry department. So like you had to do these whole processes of signing in and signing out and masking up when you're in the lab and all those kinds of stuff. So as long as that protocol was followed, you were good to come back. So like the Zal lab was one of the first folks that could come back. And so in the middle of it in that summer, I was able to come back to Edmonton and work on that. And some of it was just a lot of fun titration. A lot of it was also like going down. I think in the basement of the chemistry building, there's just like this massive machine that's able to like scan and read like what's in those compounds. I thought, first of all, I was like, wow, like I did not know there were these like high tech apparatuses or apparati, I don't know what the plural of apparatuses within like the UofA, because like the ones we use in our lab, but it's like it's old and you break it and you have to go rusty and all those kinds of things. So I'm like, I did not know I was like looking for it. I don't know why I thought it would be old and rusty, but that's what I was like getting ready to work with. But it was just awesome though, because in that moment it's like, oh wow, like I actually have to now apply the knowledge that I'd taken from class and like work on these readings and like make those observations and conclusions based on your data, not with like a correct answer in mind. Because like when you're doing your labs in your classroom, there's not that there's a right answer like that you're supposed to work towards, right, that you're going to get marked on. But with this, it's like you're just kind of supposed to, you make a hypothesis and
go for it. But at the same time, you also have to just trust your data and accept whatever your data is.
Whatever it is. So it's like that was a fun foot in the door. And also chemistry is not my program of study, so it was just interesting to do something a little outside the box. But
yeah. Okay, before we wrap this up, I know you mentioned several times that you're a spontaneous person and don't really have any certain plans, but any plans for post-presidency?
I'm gonna sleep a lot. Yeah. Sleeping is gonna be the first big plan. I don't know, man. It's gonna be a different change. Like everyone's like, how like are you gonna get used to it? Because I'm gonna be a student again. I'm still a student, but like I'm gonna be like a full-time student next year. So it'll be
an
adjustment. There won't be an office, to come in and store all your shit in.
Instead of only one of those cushiony pillows you have in your office, you have 10 or 12 at the sub atrium. So
that's
a win.
Yeah, there you go. It's a win. Yeah, I know, and just like relax on that. I don't know if that's gonna happen, boss. I don't I like I said, just like catch up and just maybe having more free time, because the hours are brutal. Like that's the thing that I don't think people realize, right? It's like you want to get so much done in 1 year in so little time that it's its own conversation about like how do you maintain work-life balance amidst all that pressure and expectation. It's really hard, and I invite people who can do that, and I encourage people to do that. But it's like when you're in these roles and you want to deliver and there's a pressure to deliver and there's articles written about you, if you don't deliver, you're in a cycle, in an environment where like you are just working overtime and are constantly stressed out. So I think kind of moving away from that will be nice, and just like the amount of decisions that you have to make every day, right?
You probably have decision fatigue.
Different fatigue gets to you, so I think that's going to be nice to like not have to stress out about as much. But yeah, just getting back into like intramurals and maybe having a soccer team and playing again. I did that like the last 2 years, but the attendance was not consistent, right? Because you never know when you're going to be traveling or something else.
Yeah.
Probably reading more books, getting into photography.
Okay.
I love cooking. I still love to cook. Like I'll cook when I have the time for that, but maybe do that even more than before. Um, and I'll probably just like you said, some hobby will come on. Like I will be on like TikTok or Instagram Reels, and I'll see some cool shit, and I'll be like,
Can't
yeah,
imagine Christian just dancing.
yeah, no, 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 not dancing. Maybe salsa. Actually, if I had to do dancing, I'd love to take like salsa classes. But no, there's like, and maybe it's just like a very like guy thing to do is like you see someone do an activity and you're like, I want to try that.
Yeah.
Like remember I was at this.
I bet I can pull that off.
I can pull that off. I was at this house party and I met this really cool guy, and he was telling me a story of how like he was in Germany, visiting family, and he just like bought a bike off like a secondhand bicycle off eBay, and then he bought like some kind of like an engine or whatever, like fuel tank, and he basically made a motorbike out of a bicycle. Like he
in Germany.
in Germany, because his dad's, I think he's a biscuit. He's a biscuit, but his dad is an engineer. So like he's got that Tony Stark engineer kind of hustle mindset in him. But yeah, it was like I built this bike, motor powered, and he just like took it from Germany to like Czechoslovakia. Like he basically traveled around Europe with it and then back, and like I was like you can do that. That's like so cool. So that type of shit, man, that's the thing I want to do. Yeah, just like build a motorbike and like go all the way down to Waterton, Alberta and back will be cool. Hanging out with friends again. And graduating, like it's as fun as my time has been on campus. Sometimes it's like I age myself when I say, oh, I'm gonna be a 7th-year student. So but like no regrets. Like I wouldn't change
But it can
any
be,
decision.
it can be very draining. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm a third year and I cannot wait
To get out of
graduate.
here.
Yes.
Yeah. You should look into running for student governance.
I'd like to
There you go.
emphasize
Yeah.
how do I run? I need anyone able to just stop me,
Yeah.
because I don't think it's my thing. No.
Why not? You can't say it's your thing after 2 years of I guess you can say that. I'm not invalidated. But like why what at what point did it stop being your thing?
I don't like the aspect of a student governance that you're not given the chance to make mistakes, and as a result, increase the iterations of your, let's say, whatever you're doing, the plans you're trying to pursue, that the goals you're trying to achieve. I don't like the aspect of not being able to have high iterations. And as a result, it's just, okay, you either have to make the right decision or there's going to be an article about you. The what was it called? The student groups that I was a part of at the time I was involved with the student governance. Well, of course, they're not at the top of at the top of attention. So I was able to have that buffer room a little. But student union, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think
Yeah.
I would appreciate not having that wiggle room.
I'm very envious of student group or club leaders. Like I was in a student group as well, and I've been involved in several student groups, but there's a lot. I think what you're talking about exists at that level. And you're right, like I wish it could be the same, but the pressure is just for whatever reason much higher here. But like yeah, you make mistakes, you try things out, and if it goes well, great. If it doesn't, no one really bats an eye. I think that aspect of people are fee paying members of your association or the thing you're supposed to run adds to that pressure, and like people might be less forgiving. of that. But like ultimately you're right, like these are where those spaces are supposed to be. Like it's citizenship building, right? Like you come in, you have an idea, you make a mistake. I think mistakes can and mistakes should be welcomed and fostered in the sense that like lessons are going to be learned from them. But like you said, the response doesn't have to be cutthroat, but accountability still has to be there, right? And I think it's like, how do you build accountability in a way that is forgiving but still is a lesson, right? And I think right now people's idea of accountability might be, like you said, very, I don't know, shit on you on Reddit or shit on you on the gateway, or whatever. But I have no solutions as to how we get there. I think they naturally have a way of evolving, and hopefully we can get to a point where like we are forgiving and remind ourselves that you're all just students wanting to help each other out and make our lives better. But yeah, it's hard when, like you said, there's so many different pressures and people are very passionate about these issues, right? Like I don't think there are very few people that I've seen come into this with negative intentions, with the sole goal of like public ridicule or like putting
echelon
drama. Drama. It happens, but I think almost always everyone is here with good intentions, but there's a miscommunication as to how that intention is displayed. But yeah, I see that yeah, it's the way she goes. But but hey, you never know. You can make a comeback.
Should I contact you for my platform?
I'll be there. No. Okay. That's great though.
Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate this conversation. I know you're very, very busy.
Of course.
So I really, really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you and learn from your experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love. I mean, we could talk for hours. There's so many things that I'd like to talk about too, but I'm like, it's like it doesn't always have to be student politics. I promise, yeah. I think I'm a fun guy outside of these things, because that's always the thing that when I work with people over time, they're like, oh yeah, man, like, when I met you, it was like suit ties and like professional and what. I'm like, I wasn't sure what vibes you were giving, and it's hard. I get it, because it's like back to that whole like, you don't know what people's intentions are. Like you don't want to. There's a guard that you put up.
Yes.
And so it's like I find that like. Actually, this is good. This is a great full circle moment. This is the advice I would give myself, having started all over. Okay. Because I think that you can let your guard down more, and it's okay to be a bit vulnerable, or be more vulnerable, not a bit vulnerable. Because that's the thing. It's like people
need to relate
to you, but at the same time you're scared to let people in, because if they see a flaw, it feels like they're going to be merciless and unforgiving with that flaw. And I think that makes you put up a front in terms of like, I will treat you respectfully, I will work well with you, but then yeah, it's like people aren't sure then where the personal can come in. And I found that almost always to that point of trust and relationship, it's built when you can put your guard down and be vulnerable with others, and they can see the human side of you, and you see the human side of them, and like it's easier for the work to get done from there on in than when you just maybe feels like there's a stick up your butt.
Yeah. Quick question: are we losing you to McMaster?
No, you're not losing me to McMaster. Someone's gonna have something to say about this. I just promise you. So when you're VP external for 2 years, you amass an amount of clothing from other SUs in universities. I think at this point my closet is either just like UofA, like swag from like different events, like beanies and toques and gloves, or just like going to another campus and like being given in exchange like a nice
Mm.
shirt. So this just happens to be what you found me in on a Sunday morning when before I showed up. But no, green and gold through and through. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. The benefit of that would be your kid is not gonna know which university you attended, which is nice.
Yeah, when this is the only proof that I was a UofA student, that's great. No. I'm not going anywhere. But here's a good question for you. If you could have gone anywhere but the UofA, where would you have gone to?
Oh man. See, when I was, so I spent when I came to Canada, the first 2 years I was in Toronto, high schooling, and
High school?
high school, yeah.
That's crazy.
Why?
Because wouldn't you have been an international student in high school as well?
Yes.
Wow.
I know.
If international student tuition is bad enough in university, I can't imagine what it was in high school.
You can see the bags under my
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay.
Not under my eyes, but my
Mhm.
parents. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
There you go.
But I think if the financial situation wasn't that bad, I would have considered U of T.
Mhm.
Looking back, I don't think that would be the right decision.
Why?
Ontario is massive. Like, not Ontario, Toronto is massive.
Yeah.
And as a student, the ability to commute you get in Edmonton, for example,
Mhm.
it's very, very different than in Toronto. In Toronto, I have friends who take 2 different trains to go to university and are living in a basement with $200-300 more rent they have to pay than I am paying right now, and I have my own
More
apartment.
space, yeah.
Exactly. So I think overall the student experience you get is less miserable.
Mhm. I like how that's where we're at. It's less miserable.
And other than that, I also spent my first year in Augustana.
Mhm.
So I think the most perfect opportunity for me, if you speak French, please go to Campus Saint-Jean. It's the best campus ever because you get the experience and the lifestyle you get in Augustana.
But
you also get the
Edmonton.
advantages of living in Edmonton.
Ah.
And that's the best one. Because I don't know if you
This is the
know this or
biggest CSJ plug ever. But go ahead, sorry.
if you know this or not, but people in Campus Saint-Jean love you. And that's not because you're Christian. I mean, that's not because you study biology or psychology, it's because you're part of the community. Does that make sense? And they support you a lot heavily. The same thing it was seen in any type of election that was happening with any candidate from Campus Saint-Jean. So that just shows the amount of love that community shows you. Just because it's smaller, it's condensed, people see each other more. And yeah, I wish I had known French. I would definitely go to
Campus Saint-Jean. Well, that's some big praise and big love. Yeah, I love our Campus Saint-Jean homies. It is like, I mean, just the Francophone community or Franco-Albertan community as a whole is, they're just vibing and they're doing it. But CSJ especially, it's also great because it reminds me of back home, like growing up in Cameroon. It's a bilingual country too, right? So there's just a lot of.
Which one are you more comfortable with, French or English?
Oh, English.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was Anglophone. I am Anglophone, but yeah, no, English went through. I used to speak really good French, up until the point where I moved to England, and then there was no one to speak French with at home, and I lost it. I remember taking a French class, because you have to take a course when you're an exec, right? So you don't want to take something too hard. So I took French. I think it was 2-on-1, so I don't have to like be as intense. Like the speaking and listening, I can kind of get it. The writing and grammar, like because I grew up speaking the language. Like I didn't all these rules of conjugation, all that. Like I don't know. I spoke French. I didn't know what roles were there behind these things. It was all natural. So like that's why I told myself that the 211 made sense for my level. Like even when I took the placement test, like I did not do good in the writing part and grammar and comprehension, but if you hear me speak French on my best day, I could probably fool someone, which is not good. And I learned that lesson twice. The first time I learned that lesson was, I don't know what overcame me. I decided, for whatever reason, to do an interview with CBC
Oh my
radio.
God.
They were reaching out and they needed someone and
French?
who speaks French. And at the time, usually these interviews, like in my first year, Rowan spoke French, so like he would usually do those. And my second year, Joanie, the VPSL, also spoke French. It's like she could do that, and we gave them the talking points, but she was busy, booked and busy. So it's like, okay, you know what? Let's try this out.
Screw it. I'm gonna go for it.
What could go wrong here? And just like she asked me some questions, go into it, and I was struggling, man. I was like, yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. And she just stopped, just like, yeah, it's okay. We don't have to continue to it. And then a very
It wasn't live, right?
Yeah, no, it wasn't live. It was
Okay,
gonna be
that's
like for an article. Yeah, 'cause she was just saying stuff. And it's like again, I was like, oui, je pense que c'est très important que like all those like filler stuff I can say, but it's like when you get to the details, I'm like, fuck it, I don't want to go from there. And she stopped the interview. She was like, in a very like African kind of way. It's like, and she was singing it like half French, half English, like n'oubliez pas votre français, hein? Like don't forget your French. C'est très important. Like go learn it. It's like, and it's like it actually came from a term of endearment. She's like, yeah, bro, like I don't do like we're not doing this interview, but go study up. So I was like, okay, lesson learned. Second time was when I signed up for French 211, and this one was more positive, but there was a French presentation that we had to do in like a presentation that we had to do in class for one of our projects, and I did the presentation. It was good. I spoke, was okay. Like I didn't think much of it. I just did my thing and went out. And then the next day I come back to class, and the prof like pulls me out of the classroom, and she's like, "Where are you from?" I'm like, Cameroon. It's like, are you francophone? I'm like, no, I'm anglophone. It's like,
You sneaky.
no. I was not being sneaky. I promise. Like, this is the thing I told her. I was like, yeah, don't let the accent fool you.
Uh-huh.
I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but the writing part, it's how. I don't even know. Frankly, I'm just kind of like, I'm gonna go. Let's review the academic policy before this episode comes out, because I'm like, I don't want the faculty hearing this and taking it out of my transcript for what kind of violation. But he's like, yeah, like the French you were speaking was even better than some of my kids in the 311 class. I was like, God damn. I was like, no, you like
you just wait for the written section.
exactly. No, I was just like, and it's like, yeah. So that was fun. It was like it was an experience, and just like learning that I have it there, but it's gone. But all to say that yeah, I love like CSJs, like is that reminder of home. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
very
Of
much.
course. Thank you. I love the tea.
Thank you.
Persian black tea, folks. Try it out.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Amirali Bigleri Podcast. Now, I'd like to finish this episode by a quote from Simon Sinek. Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. And that sometimes means you have to make tough decisions that not everyone will like. The art of leadership is knowing when to stand firm and when to compromise. It's not about making everyone happy, but about making the right choices for the greater good.